Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Inlay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Ascari, and today with us we have none other than Mr. Greg Wycliffe. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, thank you very much for agreeing to come on. I know you're busy. We've been doing this we're trying to set this up for like over a month now. So
It happens, it happens. Lots whizzing by the timeline, lots to do. And you also got to make a living and pay the bills. You know how it is. So
yeah, it's easy to spend money. It's hard to make money.
absolutely. Absolutely. So how are things? We're going to talk about globalism. We're going to talk about immigration, the PPC, of course. And we actually met at the PPC conference in the summer.
Yeah, we met in Ottawa. It was pretty cool. I don't really get out much, so if anybody has any following, it feels like I'm meeting a celebrity. So it's very important. For me.
Yeah. It's I'm always flattered when people are like, I watch all your videos, and yeah, well, I appreciate that, but there's a lot of work to be done, and yeah, I'm happy to kind of send the right message out there and try to inspire people to speak up. That's kind of always been my thing since the beginning of way back in 2019 when I joined the PPC. I noticed no one really cares. No one really cares about Canadian politics. And I always thought of it was this like very hard challenge to try and get people to give a crap, get Canadians to give a crap because it's always dominated by the States. The average Canadian can list off the Mueller scandal, all these things about Trump scandals, all these things about going on in the States. But if you tell them about like the SNC-Lavalin scandal at the time, they'd be like, whatever. CBC kind of, I guess that's kind of interesting. And I think especially now we're seeing, since we're kind of being enveloped by the States and an aggressive, we're being preyed upon by an aggressive strongman Trump. I think now we're noticing that, we're a country that has not been prioritizing itself much at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing how overnight everybody became patriots in Canada.
Yeah. The same people who are calling us colonizing, racist, post-national, bad country. What do we have to be proud of? And then all of a sudden when Trump shows up, it's a different story, it seems. So
I'm following this 51st state thing. I don't have a position on it. I actually think we should stay Canada, but it's like, I said it to people. I'm like, wait a minute. You're the one that said you didn't give a crap about Canada. What do you care if Canada joins the U.S.? It's a post-national state.
Yeah, for real. Absolutely. It's why it's obviously very hypocritical. It's very transparent. And I would hope that more people, realize that. But here we are.
Greg, let me ask you a question about Carney and Polyev. What do you think is going to happen? Let's go with Carney. Like, what do you think is going to happen with him in the leadership race?
I think he is the chosen one. They even name dropped him earlier. And I think that they dropped his name like a year ago or something, like a year and a half ago. They kind of toyed with this idea of teasing that, oh yeah, maybe it'll be Carney sort of thing. And that kind of got hand waved away quickly. But I think that he's probably going to be the guy that they try to prop up and make the leader. And I think you can kind of look at it one of two ways. On one hand, the Trudeau brand is so strong, and the Trudeau brand is all about, woke progressive politics. And I heard someone say, well, they're definitely going to make it a woman leader because that leans into the kind of existing Trudeau ethos, Trudeau politics. And it's kind of just going to pass the torch to a woman to make it like, well, don't you want a woman prime minister? And like kind of leaning into the existing Justin Trudeau politics. However, on the other hand, people are noticing how weak the country has become, how in dire straits the country is with, just cost of living and, of course, being preyed upon now by the United States. So they might be pivoting to actually maybe we need our own strong man. Maybe we need our own guy who cares about the economy. And that's obviously Mark Carney. So to me, it's like they're going to go to one extreme or the other. They're either going to lean back into Trudeau politics with a woman leader, or they're going to lean into, you know what, let's kind of pivot and let's try to make Poilievre irrelevant and say all of the same things about caring about the economy, except we also care about Black people more because we're liberals. And remember, the conservatives are still racist. So we'll save the economy, and you can, pat yourself on the back for being virtuous. That's so. I think they probably will go with Carney. I think that because people are hurting so much, they are starting to care about my economy. So yeah, that's my prediction. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. It's I was not expecting them to be able to get away with so much, and I'm guessing they didn't expect it either. So they've moved to the right of the conservatives fiscally with Carney. They're talking about axing the carbon tax, and now they're trying to move right of the conservatives socially. They're talking about a moratorium on immigration. I wonder if they're just saying, "Hey guys, why don't we just try to poach some of the more radical ones from the PPC policy?" Like maybe withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, and then the conservatives are just completely irrelevant.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why I've been criticizing Pierre Poilievre and this conservative government this conservative party for 2 years, because they haven't really, I've been very, very unimpressed. They've just cynically sort of been an establishment party trying to be strategic, trying to be smart, not really kind of showing their hands, not really showing anything other than that we're not Trudeau. And because of that, we have this movement that's based on anti-Trudeau. And now that Trudeau's gone, it's based on a bunch of very shallow catchphrases. And that's not much to get people invigorated. And especially if you have someone like Carney show up and say a few things about the economy, you're kind of not that relevant anymore. It's not that impressive anymore. And what I've been calling for is, Poilievre needs to be way more aggressive in terms of reinvigorating the Canadian spirit. It was the perfect opportunity after the convoy. Here we have a leader, Justin Trudeau, not even recognizing fundamental rights of the country, acting like a tyrant. And that's a great jumping off point. That's a great sort of, thing to poke to poke Trudeau in his side. And he's really hardly done that. With most of the press conferences or comments that Poilievre has made about the trucker convoy, he almost brings it more often back to the cost of living. Like, he still doesn't really say the magic words of like vaccine mandates or tyrant or he's a disgrace to democracy. Like, he's been very, very, he does not go into that rhetoric towards Trudeau and what he did during COVID. And I think there's a reason for that, probably because they have the same, big pharma donors, or, it'll upset certain donors or people in Ottawa that actually pulled the levers between both the Liberals and the Conservatives. It's a very unfortunate sort of situation that we're in, because not only do I think the Poilievre and Conservatives aren't really that different from the Liberals, but a lot of people are kind of buying into them anyway, just because they're so desperate, just because they're so they don't see any other sort of options that they don't think that are strong enough. So they're kind of just sitting back on the couch and saying, "Oh, I'm going to support Poilievre." And it was a great opportunity to try and like reclaim the meaning of the country and to actually oppose Justin Trudeau and his progressive politics. But he hasn't done that. If there's anybody who's playing Mr. Dress Up more than anybody right now, it's Pierre Poilievre pandering to Sikhs and Hindus. So, yeah.
You got a fan. You're a smart man, Greg.
Thanks, Sherry. Appreciate that.
You notice how Pierre Poilievre, he's aged like several years, like 5 years in the last year.
It's amazing what happens when you take your glasses off. Dude, I totally agree. He doesn't look very hot. He doesn't look very good. Like, he looks stressed, and it's just, there's a lot to be said about the vibe. There's a lot to be said about the coolness factor. And this is truly how human beings work. Therefore, it's how leadership and psychology works. And therefore, it's how politics works. You can hate Trudeau all day. He's attractive. He's been able to swindle people with his charm and his slow speaking pattern. Okay. With Polyev, he's been trying to emulate something, trying to create a strongman persona. Unfortunately, I don't think it resonates. He's been getting better, but in general, he looks stressed. He looks like he's reading a script. It looks like he's crapping his pants half the time, especially now with all this Trump stuff. And you can feel that, right? You can feel that. And people, as I said earlier, they're so demoralized, and they're so desperate for an option for some sort of hope, that they delude themselves. They completely delude themselves into thinking that this Polyev guy is a strong man that's going to save us. That being said, that those delusions have cracked with Trump showing up, getting elected, actually pushing things that oppose progressive politics, and starting to bully us. Now that we see what a strong, charismatic conservative leader is actually like, I think there's been a lot of disenchanted Conservative Party supporters. I was actually on the phone with one the other day. I used to grill them all the time and say Polyev, sex, poly, and I would poke holes and everything, and I'd kind of rib him a little bit, and he hated it. He hated it. The one time he even hung up on me. He's like, I don't want to have this phone call. You're mean. But now, since the Trump thing, since Trump has shown up, actually been a strong man, he's exposed how weak our leaders are, including Polyev. And now I had the phone call with him the other day, and he's like, yeah, this Polyev is not the guy. He's not the guy to save this country. It's becoming pretty obvious. And I think it's important to emphasize how there's no, what's it called? There's no poll. There's no study that explains this, that proves this, that shows what I'm talking about. I've made videos before to say like this leadership thing happens on a heart level. Okay. We can do all the focus groups we want, but it's really, it's either, you either resonate with people or you don't. You get inspired by people or you don't. And that is something that happens in this kind of psychological realm, this kind of unconscious, unspoken thing that is very, very powerful in politics. And a lot of people who follow politics, unfortunately, especially on the right wing, I don't think they get that. I don't think they truly understand that, that element of politics that's crucially important. It's not like a popularity contest. It is a popularity contest. It's not like you should try to be cool and be look attractive and say things that are really viral on Twitter, even if they're not specifically about policies. But it actually is all about that. It's all about that. It's all about being the cool person in the room, being the strong man in the room, and swaying people to your way of thinking.
Have you noticed that Pierre Poilievre, he's rebranded himself? I can't even stop counting. He tried different. Do you know what I'm talking about? He did those little videos where he's holding the quarter and he's like, "All right, liquid natural gas." That didn't work, so he bulked up and he went door to door. And then he tried doing the Trump thing where he goes to factory workers. And now I think it's completely imploded, and they've unleashed their candidates and they're putting out videos.
Yeah, I mean, they're always doing everything except actually being a strong nationalistic conservative person, right? We could list off the amount of crazy slam dunks strongly saying that there is only two genders, strongly saying that we need to stop immigration. And he doesn't even do that. It would be so wildly popular with the base, and the clips would go viral, but all we ever get is sort of this sheepish, passive, shy way of sort of saying that, but not coming out and actually saying it. And then we're told, no, the media is going to attack him. The media attacks him anyway. And also, he can't talk about immigration or there only being two genders. Simple slam dunks for a conservative nationalist as a leader in Canada. But he can say proudly at a podium, we are going to send more arms to Ukraine. You know what? Iran is a genocidal state, and it would be a gift to humanity if Israel bombed Iran. So he does not hesitate for having these very pointed, very aggressive stances on foreign policy when he's not even the leader, by the way. But he can't even say basic things like, hey, maybe as a conservative, we should stop mass immigration or even slow it down. He always just says, we're going to improve the system. And even recently, you can see clips of him with the glasses and without. And he's like, we need direct flights to Amritsar. Like he'll say that proudly in a room full of Sikhs, of course. He's not going to say that in, Sault Ste. Marie, surrounded by, white Canadians. But, yeah, it's very uninspiring. It's very uninspiring. It's very sad. And as I said, people are so kind of desperate that they're deluding themselves into thinking that this guy is going to seismically change things, where I just think if or when he gets in, it's going to be a sort of nominal improvement.
I say that there's two assumptions made. Trudeau assumed that Trump would never get into power, and Pierre Poilievre assumed that Trudeau would never get out. So Pierre Poilievre's entire strategy was, Trudeau bad. So now Trudeau's gone, and his whole credibility's imploded.
Yeah, and speaking of rebrand, he had the glasses, being the smart guy, took the glasses off. Shout outs to Diagolon and Jeremy and Ferryman, because they started the Millhouse meme. This is where this came from. And then he took his glasses off, and then there's like a Millhouse meme of Millhouse taking his glasses off, and he's all beady-eyed, and like it looks like Poilievre with his glasses off. Meme magic is real. But no, it's I kind of feel bad for the guy, honestly. Like he's trying out there. You can see how uncomfortable he is and stressed, trying to be a politician, be a leader, and it's just it's not working. It's not working for the guy. But yeah, they're doing a rebrand this Friday, I think. Is it February 14th? They're doing a rally. They're going to do a Canada First rally, which is the new phrase. This is the new brand. Which is, I don't know how you're going to, like, it sounds good, but to say this guy's Canada First, that is a stretch. But needless to say, they're going to go for it anyway.
It's like a shakeup, though. Trudeau, I guess he's technically still the prime minister. He said he poached this whole idea about interprovincial trade, which is technically not a People's Party position. It's been talked about over the years, but he's coming out and he's talking about that. Now Pierre's candidate, one of his MPs, is talking about monopolies, government-sponsored oligopolies and monopolies. So they're trying to be like anti-corporatist. So I don't know what Canada's going to look like in 2 weeks, 3 weeks with the political parties.
Yeah, it's very interesting. The landscape is really shifting. It's really shifting right now, and it is quite exciting. But honestly, I'm call me ignorant, call me black-pilled, but I'm not tuning into much of it. I feel like it's a lot of grandstanding, but not a whole lot of substance. And I mean that for everybody across the board. You have all these liberals trying stuff out, trying out different messaging, trying out different branding to try and capture the imaginations or the support of Canadians. And because Trudeau's now gone, you have Poilievre doing the same thing, kind of trying out different brands, trying out different things. And it's hard to take any of it seriously in terms of what they're saying and what they will actually do. We care about the Arctic now. And it's like, oh, we care about the Arctic because of Trump. It is funny. It's sad, but it's also funny because Trump is in charge. Trump is kind of dictating the conversation from the U.S. by just going on, like saying a few things in a press conference, and now the entire country has to react. And it's I made a video about it, but like we're not really in a great negotiating standpoint with the states. Sure, we could kind of do our own sort of retaliation to tariffs, but just in general, like we don't really have a united front. We're not really a united country whatsoever right now, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help any of our leaders because it's a lot harder to be agile and to actually move forward with something more radical when the country is like not even behind it. Like, we don't even really have a prime minister right now. It's like the timing is, if you're Trump, the timing is perfect, right?
Like I said, like Trudeau really thought that Trump would never get into power. So he just figured he could continue destroying this country indefinitely. and now you got this, sort of quasi foreign threat. And as you said, you can't form a united front. We don't have a good bargaining position.
Yeah. It's certainly, I'm hoping it's going to be the absolute low point of Canadian identity in the 21st century, because like what is there to be proud of? What is there to, kind of get behind that's promising? Really, all you really have is the PPC. And I mean, there's a lot of work to do. So
Yeah, I mean, like at the People's Party, like we're trying really hard, and I feel it now. Like there's a lot of citizens that stepped up. So I'm guessing it was the same when you ran, where it was just citizens that were sacrificing their time and they're going out there, and it's just you don't have the brand recognition of the Conservative Party, but you do it anyway.
It's that was a really exciting time joining the PPC in 2019, and you described it very well. It was like that. It was a bunch of people who had never really been in politics before. What's the word? Bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, naive, had no idea what they're getting themselves into, including me. I had a bit more of an idea of how badly we were all going to get slammed by the mainstream media, but it was funny talking to other people there, and like we're doing kind of like a crash course on being a politician, how to debate, how to campaign, all this stuff over the course of a couple of days. And the one person's like, "Oh, well, what do we do if we get slandered as like racist by the media?" And I told them, it's not an if, sir. It's a when you get slandered by the media. The difference I would say is, I would say I'm biased. It was tougher. It was tougher back then for the PPC. Okay. There was climate change was the thing. And suggesting anything about immigration made you like persona non grata. I had old ladies just become totally hostile and like run away from me, basically, by when I said I was with the PPC. Grown men, like there's this visceral reaction, and it was nuts. It was nuts. So that's when the red pill for me then was realizing how effective propaganda is. Just a small comment on the CBC of, oh, well, there's some connections maybe to white supremacists that manifest as they're literally Nazis, get them out of my neighborhood. Like it snowballs into something much more ugly in public life. Just when it's like one little comment in the newspaper, it's almost like telephone, like it kind of like just grows and gets even more ugly and exaggerated to the actual people who consume it.
It was a lot worse. You actually got media attention in 2019. I think after that, they realized it's better to just pretend the PPC doesn't exist.
Yeah, so I think it was that was very interesting. I do think that Max got really lucky. They did give him a lot of press. I think it was kind of a ploy to hurt the Conservative Party. It's like if we can focus on this guy leaving the Conservative Party, we can make the Conservative Party look bad, right? We can make them look like a shattered, sort of broken institution or party, and to try and humiliate them. So let's talk to Max. They called him Mad Max. I don't know who came up with Mad Max. We got to bring that back though, man. Like we got to bring back Mad Max and really kind of take on that bombastic, I don't care energy. But yeah, they certainly do try to, like never mention him now. And I think that it's really the PPC's job to push the envelope, to go out there and say the things that might get you called racist or whatever. But I'd say that's the beginning of the campaign. People disagree with me on this, but if you see the trajectory of Donald Trump in 2016, when he got called racist, that wasn't the end. That was the beginning. He got called racist in the media every single day. And the thing is, people would be like, oh, is he racist? And they would look into the actual clip. They would look into what he actually said and be like, I actually kind of agree with him. I could see why people think that's racist, but he's actually right. And I think that's really the key for PPC candidates and Max. It's to find that perfect line, that lane, kind of leaving the breadcrumbs for the media to kind of bait them. Yeah, come call me racist for saying this, because you could call that racist. But the thing is, we need to start the conversation. We need to be like unignorable to the mainstream media. And it is a clever balancing act, right? Because you don't want to go out there and say things that are actually like disgusting and vile, because then that doesn't help. But there is a certain line to walk, I think, where yeah, you kind of bait the media into trying to label you bad things, but the people will actually agree with you. The people will actually agree with you. And if you talk to anybody, by the way, who's actually been like red pilled, no matter what the topic is, almost every single time, this is how it plays out. Something that they sort of like, something that they sort of have sympathy for, gets smeared as bad in the media. And they're like, huh. And then the person looks into it and they're like, oh, the media is basically lying. They're totally exaggerating. Like, it doesn't have to be something to do with like racism and immigration. It happens on other topics. But that is like the red pill for so many people, when something they like or something that they have some amount of sympathy for gets smeared by the media, and then the person actually looks into it themselves and they're like, well, this is actually dishonest. Maybe there's more to the story here. And then they kind of start to tumble down the rabbit hole and yeah, start to get on board with how fake and dishonest our media is and all that. So
Yeah, for me, it was the Kavanaugh trial in the U.S.
Oh yeah, see, there you go.
The woman was so obviously lying through her teeth. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? And the softball questions that the Republicans were throwing her way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, why don't you cross-examine her like an actual, court of law?
Yeah. That's there you go. That's it.
I pissed off a lot of Kelly Blasey Ford supporters right now.
Yeah. I don't recall all the details and the names of that one, but right.
No, it's okay. I don't want to go down memory lane, but I had a question about Operation Cactus and Warren Kinsella. Did you get wrapped up in all that?
Not overly. I obviously I heard about it. I remember hearing the clips, the leaked clips of people who used to work there. Yeah. Honestly, it makes me feel kind of sick to my stomach to even think about someone like Warren Kinsella, these very cynical, like political operatives who are just like hired to push some sort of narrative. Like Warren Kinsella most recently has made articles about immigration being bad, about how, someone like, multiculturalism is bad. And it's like, it was your full-time job to make Maxime Bernier look racist for saying this exact same thing back in 2019. And it's just like, I'm used to this now, but it's just like these people are disgusting. Like, these people are absolutely vile and disgusting. And it's crazy that they still have a career, that people still listen to them. And yeah, it's such a thankless thing to be ahead of the curve. It's such a thankless job to, hey, immigration is going to be a problem. We should talk about it now. No, shut up, racist. 5 years later, hey, we need to talk about immigration. Hey, that's what I said. Shut up, racist. You're still racist or something. We know that you were correct, but we don't care about that. We're not going to talk about it. And you're still crazy, by the way. We're still going to call you crazy. But yeah, that's just kind of the way it is. And I guess that's kind of why I started. It's been a while since I've done an episode, but I did this podcast called Controlled Opposition, which kind of talks about this this phenomena of, fake opposition, the Conservative Party being fake. And to a same degree, the sort of media does the same thing, because the media is supposed to oppose the ruling party. They're supposed to be critical of the ruling party, but they are subsidized by the Canadian government. And I've always been like a media nerd, so it's something I'm very interested in, the way that these people kind of subversively say that they're on your side, say that they're holding the government accountable. But if you follow the ball, if you pay attention to the details, it's like, you're not doing that. You're not doing that at all. Oh, you're criticizing this 5 years later. Oh, you're talking about this a year later when it's totally irrelevant. And also, you called everyone crazy who was talking about it when it actually was relevant, and when there actually was a pivotal moment when we could have done something about it. And it's I keep tumbling down the rabbit hole, and it's just kind of getting grimier and sneakier and snakier, and all these weasels everywhere. And And yeah, this kind of I look out for the subversion more than anything now, and I don't really pay attention as much to sort of the WWE liberal versus conservative, to what do they say in question period. That stuff doesn't interest me as much, because it really just kind of feels like the bread and circuses. It's become the bread and circuses. It feels very, very fake. And meanwhile, we have most major institutions have completely failed us, might be compromised with foreign interference and other things. And, are like, they sort of allude to it, but it's like, why aren't we investigating this? How can we trust any of you, quite frankly? So yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to what you said earlier, the sense of apathy. Like everybody is looking at U.S. media, so they didn't care about SNC Lavalin. But that the potential treason, foreign interference, nothing. Like nobody in my circle of friends even knew about it, let alone cared.
Yeah, yeah, and if you think of the media's job, it's supposed to tell the news and hold the people in power accountable. But if you imagine that maybe they're actually doing something completely different, maybe their job is to convince the public that that's what they're doing, right? Like their job is just to convince you that we are holding them accountable. That's the whole job. It's not to actually do any of that. It's to convince the viewer that we're holding them accountable and we're totally doing a good job at telling the news. Like and when you think of it that way, everything starts to make perfect sense. Like everything starts to make, oh, okay, that's why they're not going into detail. That's why they're saying this and then kind of pushing it aside, because it makes it, yeah, I feel like they're taking care of it, but they're not. They're just kind of doing this thing where they baby us, they kind of lull us back to sleep, and we don't get into the nitty gritty details. And this is something that has been so frustrating that I've noticed for a long time. I always say that Canada is perpetually on amateur hour in comparison to the States. Our media, our marketing, our business world, like you don't even have to be in politics. If you work in business, you notice a huge difference between how an American company operates and how a Canadian company operates. No offense, Canadian business owners, but this is a very real sort of pattern where Americans are much, much, much more professional and aggressive, especially in terms of like communications and marketing. But yeah, and also to extend that, Americans really care about their politics. They treat it like a sport. They get involved. They care about their constitution. They say, what? Somebody lied? What? Somebody violated part of our constitution? They care. They go into the nitty gritty, and they will make a big deal. They'll make a mountain out of a small molehill detail. And we don't have that sort of obsession with like being righteous, that obsession with sort of truth and like upholding like freedom, honesty, and what the Constitution is supposed to mean. We don't have that same autonomy that so many Americans do. I used to make fun of it. Oh, my freedom. Americans saying my freedom. Oh, they're just a bunch of dumb Americans. But then after COVID, I'm like, I wish we had that. I wish we had more dumb Canadians who are just like my freedom, and we did have that, thankfully, to some degree, but it's not nearly as strong and as it was in the States. And we saw, as I said, during COVID, how important that is to have when you're becoming a demoralized nation, when you're becoming, oh my God, real quick, Markinen, thank you so much for the 10 gifted memberships on YouTube. You are a legend, sir. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Shout outs to Markinen in chat. Oh my gosh, 07s.
I don't see him on my side, so he's probably on your side only.
Yeah, I think so. Wow. Yeah, sorry about that.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't see him over here, but my question was going to be, why is that? Why do the Americans have that sense of responsibility that we don't?
I mean, that's a great question. I usually look into more of why we don't have any of that in Canada. Like I try to focus on why we don't have that here and how we could try to cultivate that here. But maybe that's actually a better way to even answer the question, is like, what does the States have that we don't? Why do they have such a strong sense of national identity? And I think the answer is a big convoluted one that has to do with American history and all the way back to 1776, and certain attitudes that were there with the founding fathers and the founding like Constitution document, blah blah blah, and how that. And I guess the question is like, how did that spirit of 1776? Why has that lasted so long? I guess that's kind of the
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Why has that lasted so long? Why has that had such staying power? Was it the national anthem, just a really great banger song? Was the flag so cool? You know, like, and I think probably the answer is something to do. Like, you could probably, if you kind of did a psychoanalysis of every single American president, that could probably get you closer to the answer, because you know there's going to be a common pattern there of what all these American presidents had or believed or cultivated, and maybe it changed a little bit over the centuries. But no, I'd say that's a profound question, and it's I would like to know the answer so we can try to cultivate that here before we become part of America. You know,
That was going to
maybe
be my
it's
next
too late.
question. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, where do you land on this whole 51st state thing?
I don't think we have much power in the situation. Like, as I said, I think that we could try to put up a fight if we wanted to. But I think in the long run, America has a lot of leverage over us. And as I said, because we don't have a unified front, there's the people who should be the most righteously strong in wanting to keep our sovereignty, which should be conservatives, which should be right-wing people. They want to join America. They're looking at the short-term grab bag, First Amendment, Second Amendment, cheaper taxes. Let's do this. Hey, what about our sovereignty? What about like the long-term consequences? Shut up. I want this now. I want to get the short-term grab bag now. So it's very sad. It's very, very sad. Like, you know, Justin Trudeau has successfully destroyed this country. He's successfully destroyed the sense of nationhood. And, so it's a very, very kind of sad moment, I think, in our history, when you see the appetite to join the states at the drop of a hat, and obviously the hypocrisy from the left saying that they're Team Canada now. That's totally disgusting and pathetic. But honestly, I'm open to anything. I'm hoping that he's doing this to try and negotiate to get Greenland, and he's kind of putting Canada on the table to create a talking point, to become part of the conversation, to bully us around in terms to get what he wants. I don't think he's actually going to move forward with it, though. I just think logistically it's way too crazy to actually implement all of that. He's got bigger fish to fry. But, you know, there might be an arrangement where he's just like, well, I want part of the Arctic. I want more security here. I want more security there. I want you to do this. I want a more secure border. You know, I think that it's a negotiating tactic first and foremost. I don't think it's actually going to happen. But for Canadians, I'm hoping this is going to be a wake-up call. I'm hoping this is going to be a point of to create some leverage and to help cultivate a stronger sense of national pride and even national identity. You know, we need to scrap this whole post-national Trudeau stuff and get back to basics and really try to find out who we are and what we want as a nation.
And what terrible pair of prime ministers, the father and son. Like from Pierre Trudeau, the decline started, and you know the son finished what the father started. It's like it's almost like a Shakespearean story.
That's interesting. That's an interesting. Yeah, it is. It is quite the epic. It is quite the epic. Absolutely. I wonder if there'll be any merchants in the story. But yeah, it's certainly a generational thing. I'm not super well versed on Canadian history when it comes to Pierre Elliott Trudeau. You know, I kind of know the basics, but one book that I do want to get is by what was it? Canada in Decay by
Don't know.
I forget his name right now. I follow him on Twitter. By Canada in Decay by Ricardo Duchesne. And he talks about beginnings of mass immigration, the racial diversification of Canada, how that started, kind of like, back in, I think, the 70s, he says. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be said about that, and how certainly the seeds were already planted way back when. And Trudeau came to finish the job. So yeah.
Yeah, the whole I was looking into the history of it. So it started out in the 60s where they were questioning biculturalism and bilingualism, and they said it was racist against the First Nations and against the Ukrainian population. And from that, you got that turd bill, the Multiculturalism Act, which Pierre Elliott Trudeau picked up and ran with. And then the Conservatives came in under Mulroney, and they're like, well, if we can't beat him at this immigration game, we can join him. So they leaned into immigration even harder. And the country's just been going down and down and down.
I mean, yeah, it's certainly it's certainly been a thing. And so much of the nation takes it for granted too. Like up until a year ago, up until like a few months ago, a lot of Canadians basically said, well, immigration is good. What could be wrong with immigration? And then it was, a few viral clips of, East Indians doing some questionable stuff in public. And then people are like, whoa, maybe we do need to, maybe there are consequences to immigration, which aren't preferable. Interesting. So,
yeah, I mean, you got two issues with getting the immigration message out. The first one is the rich people in the rich areas, which generally influence policy. They're not subject to the initial ramifications of immigration. It's always in these like terrible ghetto areas where they never see the immigrants. The second one is when you bring the immigrants over. I'm trying to talk to them and trying to tell them, mass immigration is not a good thing. It's almost impossible to get through to them because the number one thing they ask me is, what can the PPC do to bring my family over? And I'm like, well, nothing.
bruh. Yeah. And that's how disgusting is that though? And instead of trying to collectivize people who already live here behind the same banner, so many politicians are cynically going, well, how can we pander to the new people and give them benefits and we'll get their vote, right? It's pretty gross. Like this idea of, pandering to every other group. Pandering to groups is fine as long as it's not, white Canadians who have already lived here. Like that is something that is just not done by politicians. And part of it is the fact that white Canadians who live here don't even think of themselves as a group. Maybe the French do. Maybe the Quebecois do. They certainly do. They certainly like to have their sense. They have a more fierce sense of identity, and they fight for it, and they oppose immigration. They're like allowed to be racist. They've been allowed to be racist for some time. It's kind of interesting how Quebec kind of gets this pass to be more aggressively against immigration and for their culture and for their identity. Whereas, Albertans are just, they're actually racists. And this is like not, you can watch 22 minutes, comedy sketches from the CBC that reflect this exact phenomena. And it kind of goes unquestioned, like these white Albertans who think of themselves as a collective group, they're just racist. And I think that, to kind of go a bit deeper on this topic, and also a bit broader at the same time, we've been programmed for a while here in Canada. I don't even see color. Diversity is our strength. Immigration is just a thing. And that what comes with that is this idea that, that race isn't important. Race isn't this thing. Canada is just an idea. Canada is just a paragraph. Canada is just like this zone of people where people are living. But at the same time, when you talk to people, this only applies to white majority countries. In people who look Indian coming from India, people get that. Oh yeah, of course. Of course, Indians are me. Duh. People who are African are from the continent of Africa. Duh. Hello. Chinese are from China. Yeah, duh. But for the UK, it's like, well, they could be any color. England, they could be any. What do you mean? There's this Irishman, a black man could be Irish. Why not? That's an Irishman. And this phenomena of like being any color you want, it only happens in white majority countries. It's a very interesting phenomena, and it's something that is like deep. It's like deep into the programming, and I think people need to understand it. I think people need to first kind of confront. It's uncomfortable, but people need to first kind of confront that and understand it. And people might say, "Oh, so what? You're white supremacist, and you want all the brown people to leave Canada now, and you want to kick them all out?" Not necessarily. No, but it's like, no, not necessarily at all. But it's more like we need to first address this problem. We need to first address this issue, this phenomenon that's going on, because I think it's sort of a mentality that specifically disenfranchises white people from thinking of themselves as a collective group who have collective interests. And, you know, we'll cry all day about how, being post-nationalist is bad, but it's like, well, what should be there? And the answer is a collective sense of identity with the people who are there. And sorry, but they happen to have a common European heritage most of the time. And it's not to like denigrate people who are non-white who have been here for generations, not at all. But it's also like, if we don't kind of look at like the basics, like the base of like the primary character of the nation, then we're still kind of just trying to play diversity games again and actually not be honest with, you know, what the core identity of the nation was initially.
I'm going to go back to what I said, like the Biculturalism, Bilingualism Commission, and then the Multiculturalism Act. It started this, I don't know if you want to call it a snowball or a dumpster fire that slowly got bigger and bigger. And then the country just abandoned the concept of culture. So it was on a crash course with this post-nationalism thing. And then on top of that what I mentioned is when you bring immigrants over, they bring with them what they know. That's all they know. That's all they are. And it's very easy to pander to them. And I see the government does this with women too. So it's a divide and conquer thing where you go to women and you say, hey, all men are sexist, vote for us. We'll give you more rights. And then when one of us says, wait a minute, no, it's all about equality. You can't do that. I'd be like, see, we told you they're sexist. And they're doing that same thing with immigrants. We told you they're racist. They don't want you to bring your family over. And you sprinkle on top of that all that globalism nonsense. It's a disaster.
Yeah. It's a lot of defying what's natural, what our natural instincts are. People will point out the one strong woman or the one, woman CEO or the exception to the rule. And it's like, well, this is the exception to the rule. I kind of like the blue apple example. They'll say, look, here's a strong woman CEO. Here's a blue apple. Apples are blue. And it's like, this is an exception though. Not all apple. Most apples are not blue. Actually, most women are not CEOs. Most women, fill in the blank. And they do that with everything. They don't just do it with the sexes, but they do it with, they'll do it with immigrants too. They'll see look at this well-adjusted Somalian guy who works for TD Bank. They're all like this. It's like, well, this is like one Americanized Somali. They are not all like that actually. And they constantly love to do this where they'll take one exception to the rule and try to kind of make you go against your own instincts. And it's very destructive. It is, I've recently become a Christian, and it's because I think evil is real. And I think Christianity has the best sort of manual to identify it and look at it. And, the devil is all about deception. It's all about deceiving. It's all about inverting things. I just feel like there's a lot of that at play. There's a lot of sort of continual narrative lies that we're told on a regular basis. And it's just so many lies to swim through. It's so many, it's so many different things to try and disentangle. It's quite maddening, as I'm sure you've
Yes.
been enjoying, right?
Yeah.
It's easy, and unfortunately, they say it's easier to trick somebody than to convince them that they've been tricked, which is very unfortunate. But
Well, I
yeah,
mean, just look at COVID the last 4 or 5 years.
yeah. No, what do you mean? That was all above board. That was all
Nothing,
fine.
nothing to
What?
see here.
What?
Yeah.
Lying during COVID? No way. Everything was safe and effective. So are you excited for the upcoming election? When do you think it's going to happen? Do you think we're going to have an early spring election, or do you think it's going to get pushed till the fall?
I don't. This is a good question, and everything is just changing. Like everything's so fluid, so it's hard to say. I thought
Sure.
that Jagmeet Singh would not call an election, and then Trudeau resigned, and I thought, okay, now he has to call an election. But now you got Mark Carney in, so it's to their advantage because Singh can't win; they're bankrupt. Carney needs time to sell the country on his vision of patriotism or whatever. So I think they're going to ride this out for as long as they can. Maybe September 2026.
Yeah, if I had to bet, I would definitely bet it's going to go till the fall as well. Mostly because the sentiment for the Conservatives is still very strong, and the Liberals will want as much time as possible to try and like rebuild their brand, rebuild their candidate. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be in the fall. And this idea that Jagmeet, like everyone's like, oh, of course there'll be an early election. Do you really think Jagmeet Singh is going to like do the right thing? Like, I doubt it. All it takes is one guy in his ear, one guy putting money in his pocket. Not that would ever happen in Ottawa, but yeah, it's like I'm not super optimistic that Jagmeet Singh is going to do the right thing, guys.
What a loser! Like that guy is just. I mean, Pierre Poilievre is spineless. Okay, fine. Millhouse, but Jagmeet Singh, if you like just listen to him on audio, not video, and you don't see the beard and the turban, he sounds like a frat boy. Like you think he's the kind of guy that would do like a keg hit upside down. He sounds like a dude.
No, I've never heard that take before. That's funny. I think you might have something there. He definitely does. Yo, bro, totally, bro. Yo, it's your groceries. We're making them cheaper, bro. Yeah, no, that's pretty funny. I mean, he definitely is. He's a loser, but back to my earlier point, he's really good at playing like the popularity game. He's really good at like somehow having all of these fans and just like appearing like cool and charming, and it's very maddening. And trust me, I'm not saying I support him, but I've started. I say this stuff sometimes and people don't like it, and like I'll give Trudeau compliments and say, hey, I don't like what he's saying. It makes no sense, but he's actually a really effective politician, guys. He had a goal to demoralize the nation, make it a post-national state that has no identity, and he was successful. So we can pull our hair out and hate him and be frustrated by him, and that's kind of part of his play. But you have to kind of respect the fact that he is doing effective politics, whether we like it or not. He is pandering to his base. He's pandering to his political idea. He's pushing his ideas. And I just say that because so many people, I'll see so many people in the right wing who are like, oh, these people are just like hypocrites and they're saying things that don't make any sense. And it's so maddening. And it's like, our rhetoric should be maddening that too. Our rhetoric should be maddening too, to them. We need to say things that is like so hard to come back from, so hard for them to respond to. It needs to be something where we put them in an impossible situation, and use the emotional, moral arguments, and just straight up looking cooler and zinger one-liners of simple, basic stuff like pop culture, not pop culture, but trying to appeal to the masses with sort of simple messaging that's about kind of one-upping each other, like think of it like a high school classroom or a high school hallway or something like that. Like more conservatives need to think of it that way, because as much as I hate Jagmeet Singh and thinks he's a loser, he's got the cool jacket on. he plays into the he's got some like cool people like next to him like snapping or whatever. I don't know. Like he's good at presenting himself and presenting his ideas, as dumb as they are. And he somehow still has this relevance, which well, I'm not even sure if that's necessarily still true, but there seems to be a lot of people who still like are just hypnotized by his turban or something, and like these diehard
It's
NDP.
something. I think it's a turban. Like now, first of all, I agree 100%. Just because you hate someone doesn't mean that they're not effective. But
Mm,
you know how the left does this? They put a woman in charge, Theresa Tam, for example. They
yep.
tell her like, whatever you do, don't put any makeup on, come out looking like a hobgoblin, it'll piss off the right, get the lesbian haircut, something like that. Probably that's what this Jimmy Dhaliwal guy is doing. It's like, but I don't even like wearing a turban. They're like, sir, we'll show you how to put it on. We'll make it for you in the morning.
That's
Just
funny.
wear it. Payman Askari will lose his shit.
I've said this before, I think, on a podcast, but I totally believe that whenever a liberal politician is going to be pushing a piece of legislation that's like especially crazy and insane, they always get a woman or a brown person to do it. Because
Yeah,
then
yeah.
if somebody criticizes it, oh, you're racist, you're sexist, how dare you say this? And a great example is probably Chrystia Freeland. It's like, I can't believe what this dumb bitch is doing to our economy. It's like, you're sexist. And it's like, what? Like, it's effective, unfortunately.
If you
It's
go to the
effective.
PMO's office, they have one
Yeah.
of those like in case of emergency, break minority glass and like a woman or a minority.
That's good. That's good. I like that. In case of emergency, grab a minority or a woman out of the. Yeah, that's funny.
Greg, one question from the audience. I'll find it for you, but they want to know why you're not running.
I'm focused on changing the culture. I'm focused on changing the Canadian culture. I'm making a documentary right now. The teaser trailer is going to be dropping within the week. I'm really excited about it. And yeah, it's not that I don't support the PPC or don't think running is super effective. I think running is very important because you need the people going charge, running into the fray, knocking on the doors, showing up at events, being there to represent alternative ideas that are outside of the Ottawa bubble and opposes the Ottawa bubble. So I think it's really important for people to be there. But yeah, I just think that I'm focused on making the content right now. I'm trying to focus on kind of creating more of a platform and more of a movement to people to get on board with. Because sure, there is the PPC to get on board with, but outside of that, what do you have outside of the Conservative Party? You have Rebel News, you have True North, you have a few others, and a lot of them are unfortunately carrying water for the Conservative Party. So that's not good. And I'm hoping to get into that space where they are and try to create my own sort of platform that's that people can jump on board with and kind of come into the world that's adjacent to the PPC world that, tries to educate people a bit on what's happening in the country. There's a lot of work to be done. And I guess to answer your question, I am not running and I'm instead focusing on content because I believe, based on my skills and talents, I think that there's way more leverage if I focus on building a media company. I think that I can create way more leverage and therefore be way more effective by focusing in on that.
Andrew says your content is good. Yeah, I agree with that. I think the People's Party, the PPC, has taken this movement as far as it can. Like, it's got a very good platform, and that's the role of a political organization. But what we need is people like what you're doing. We need people to be out in front and educating the people. Because as a politician, if you go to the door and you have to explain these things at the door in 30 seconds, it's not really possible. So if you look at the Trump administration, what did they do for the 4 years from 2020 to 2024? Social media, like they're just putting out messaging. And Mike Benz has been preparing people for this USAID debacle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, after the convoy, it became very clear that activism is, of course, important. But like that activism at the trucker convoy, that was an emergency. That was an emergency. There was a lot of urgency around that. People kind of just naturally collectivized together because of the dire situation, and it worked. It was very miraculous how it worked. But now we don't just need activists. Like we need entrepreneurs. We need people who are building stuff. We need people who are looking at the long term and also confronting and accepting how bad things really are, which can be tough, which can be very tough. It's not easy, and that's why when I look at this political landscape right now, I just see a lot of, especially people on the right wing, a lot of people flailing around, acting like scared children. Quite frankly, they're not thinking for the long term. They're thinking,
oh, I just want to get rid of Trudeau. Oh, just vote for Polyev. Oh, I don't want Max because he's not gonna win.
oh, let's become the 51st state. Yeah, Maple MAGA. Like it's all very like, impulsive. It's like an impulsive child who just kind of wants a piece of candy. And that's not like, that just speaks to how desperate and afraid we are. But that's, giving into that is definitely not the answer. The answer is to be an adult, to be a grown up, to see, wow, this is a real mess in here. It's gonna take a long time for us to even begin to clean this up. But it's and it's gonna be hard work. But someone's got to do it. And I also do encourage people, like, it doesn't always have to be a political organization. Like it can be something that's sort of adjacent to politics. There's other ways to be effective. Not everyone has to be a YouTuber. Not everyone has to be a politician. Maybe if you have a hobby, or maybe if you have like a skill, or you work in a certain industry, and then you think of something to grow from that. Like we need not just entrepreneurs, but like we need, like, to put it a different way, we need kind of like our own elite, right? There's a lot of right wing people who are like, oh, the corrupt elite, they're screwing us over, blah blah blah, and you're right. However, we need to have the mentality of, when it comes down to turning this country around, it's not just like destroying. I had a debate with this anarcho-capitalist, this libertarian, the other day, and he kind of has this like wet dream of just like destroying the government or something, and then like something better would take its place. And it's like, let's talk about what's actually realistic. There's not going to be this huge, destruction of our institutions. The people in power are going to ensure that. What we need is, over time, we need powerful, successful people who own businesses, who have resources, that are part of a network, who all agree on the same politics, who have a similar sort of vision for what they want. And then maybe they can get into political parties. Maybe they can get into certain institutions and industries and start working together to actually steer our institutions in the right direction, or make alternative ones to, fill in the blank. And that maybe that sounds like sort of abstract, but it's a lot less abstract than this idea of just like, let's just, we're going to destroy the government and something else will come in. It's like, no, we need to look at the long term here. We need to look at the long haul, and it's not going to be a little simple Death Star solution where somebody just kind of shoots a missile into the Death Star, the whole thing explodes. It's like, no, it's going to be a long slog, long road ahead. Could take generations, but at the end of the day, people need to be skilled. People need to be successful. People need to have money, have a good job, and build something worthwhile.
So, Greg, I actually have to go. I got to do a drive down to the bank, and I was planning on listening to your debate with, I think it was Gov on Jason Levine.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to follow that, you can go to Jason Levine's profile or YouTube account. And you can catch it there. Before we go, Greg, can you just tell people where they can go follow you, watch your content?
Yeah, sure. So if you Google my name, most of it should come up. I got a website, gregwycliffe.com. You can also check out my Twitter at GWDUB. I'm on YouTube at GWDUB, or again, just search for my name and you should find my social media. Thanks a lot for having me, Payman. And best of luck, of course, with the campaign when it comes up. And we got some time to try and build a strong PPC narrative, I think, before the next election, especially with all these other people floundering around trying to fight Trump, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm not worried. The more they're hemorrhaging voters, the better it is for us.
Awesome.
Greg, thank you very much for coming on. I know you're a busy man, but I really appreciated this. Thanks.
Yeah, and heads up for the trailer that I'm going to be dropping for the documentary I'm making, and that should be coming up in the next week. Thanks so much for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Anytime, buddy. Take care.
Awesome.